Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. John Batten. I'm a senior lecturer in sport and exercise psychology and the subject group lead for sport and exercise sciences at the University of Winchester. And I'm delighted to introduce to you today Professor Alan Pearce from La Trobe University, who is a collaborator of mine in research related to brain injuries in sport. And in this short interview today, I'm going to be talking to Alan a little bit about his recent exploratory analysis that was published in Sports Medicine, titled The Effects of Stricter Management Guidelines on Return to Competition Timeframes Following Concussion in Professional Australian Rules Football. So, Alan, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. So, Alan, I just wondered if we could start by you telling us a little bit about the rationale you were thinking behind this research.
Okay, so probably as you are well aware from all sports around the world, concussion is becoming a really topical issue. And one of the areas within that is, when is a player ready to actually come back to play? And so that's been a bone of contention across a number of sports in terms of, is it 7 days? Is it 10 days? Is it 14, 21, 28? And has the doctor got it right? You think a player should be off for another week, and they somehow miraculously get cleared to play. So this is, I guess, something that has always fascinated me as a neurophysiologist, to try and find out what is happening in the brain. But in this particular study, it's really been about what's happening in Australian football, because there's a lot of talk about becoming more conservative in terms of return to play. Players are staying out for longer because it's better for their long-term brain health and all that. So the idea was to really examine that over the last 4 years.
Okay. So the focus is on return to play timeframes in Australian rules football, as you've mentioned. In terms of how you've gone about examining kind of this process, what methods did you use in this particular research paper?
Well, it was really basically just around public information for us. So part of the impetus for this study was that in early 2020, there was a media release from the Australian Football League saying that they were going to change their policy around return to play, and say that that in order to play, they had to get a medical clearance, but 5 days prior to their next match. So rather than clearing them, having up to 24 hours before a match to clear them, they had to actually clear them in 5 days prior. And that was the idea, was that was actually then going to extend the time out. And so for me, it was like, oh, this could actually be abused, because what we see around in other countries is that, players get cleared almost immediately, and then they can play the following week. So basically what we did was we looked at public information. So the AFL have a injury webpage where they list all injuries, so whether it's knees and ankles, but also concussion. And so when we got a concussion injury, they would be logged into the system. And then I would look at another website, publicly available website, called afltables.com. And they would give us an idea of when that player actually played their first match after a concussion. So we got this nice, accurate picture of when they were concussed versus when they were returned to play. And so what we looked at was 4 years worth of data from 2017 to 2020. And we looked at the number of matches they missed, but also the number of days that they missed. And so we basically just did an analysis across the 4 years. One of the things that we did, though, was we combined the data from 2017 to 2019 and then compared that to 2020, even though we did present data across the years. And what we showed was actually contrary to our hypothesis, that in 2020, the days between concussion and return to play had actually halved.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting. So I guess in terms of the rationale for this new return to play protocol, the intentions are admirable in terms of trying to extend the amount of time it takes people to return to sport, to minimise the risk of re-injury and allow sufficient time for recovery. But you actually found that it took them longer. They were actually shorter return to. Okay, That's very interesting. So what do we do with this research, Alan? So in terms of what are the implications of this work, and how do we move forward from here?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because we had submitted the paper in November of 2020. After we finished the data collection, we hurriedly, got it, because we knew that was fairly explosive information. But as per the scientific review process, it took quite some time, and unfortunately for us, I guess the Australian Football League actually pipped us to the announcement, because they had in January announced that they would do a 12-day stand down policy. So in 2020, as I said, there was a 5-day sort of a leeway between medical clearance and return to play. But in 2021, what they said is if you were concussed, you are out automatically for 12 days. Then you start to enter your return to play clearance. So you had to prove that you had no symptoms, and the doctor's recommendation was that you were cleared to play only after day 12. So for us, it was a little bit, we thought it was a little bit of a coincidence, because if you look at the data in our study in 2020, the return to play timeline was 11.5 days, down from 19 in 2019. And so we thought it was a little bit of a coincidence that they'd made 12 days now the minimum stand down time. So they've kind of done our job for us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess them hipping you to the post is one thing, but ultimately the safety of the players is the most important thing here. And so extending the return to time frame from or back up to a minimum of 12 days is probably going to be beneficial for the players in the long term. Well, thank you ever so much for your time, Alan. Obviously some really important work, and I know you're doing a lot of work in this area generally, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on again in the future to talk about any subsequent publications that you produce. If it's okay with you, I'll post a link to the article in the description that accompanies this video for anyone who wants to read further.